Good evening and welcome to the Pasadena Convention Center and to tonight's Vote Center Placement Project, VCPP for short. It is our second such meeting. It's the second phase or second round of the meetings that the LA County has been hosting for our esteemed voters throughout Los Angeles County. My name is Danny Donabedian. I'm a board member on the Armenian National Committee, Pasadena chapter. And I, along with my colleague, Shahib Ezjan, who is somewhere back there, will be running this evening's presentation. So the ANCA Pasadena chapter is a CBO, or a community-based organization, partnering with Los Angeles County to conduct outreach and facilitate meetings such as this. But first, I'd like to begin by introducing you to our organization. Tonight's meeting, it's a collaboration with the Armenian National Committee, Pasadena chapter, and the city of Pasadena, and primarily the city clerk's office. Just an introduction about what the Armenian National Committee is all about. It's the largest and most influential grassroots organization in the U.S., in the Armenian American political grassroots organization in the U.S., As a public affairs organization, it is devoted to advancing issues of concern to the Armenian American community. And my board members who are here tonight are Shori Gepremian, our chairperson, Sonia Stepanyan, our secretary, Greg Abadjan, our treasurer, and Shahib Ezjan, whose name I mentioned, and myself, Danny Donabedian. City of Pasadena, City Clerk's Office, we have with us City Clerk Mr. Mark Jomsky, Assistant City Clerk Latasha Reese, Deputy City Clerk Sandra Robles, Senior Office Assistants Lilia Novello, Valerie Flores, and Ruben Martinez. Also from Los Angeles County Registrar Recorder's County Clerk's Office, we have Representatives Laura Herrera, who's the Voting Solutions for All People. She's responsible for all of that. We have Jeff Klein, Annabelle Ortega, and Johnny Harrington. I would like to thank LA County and City Clerk's Office for the tremendous amount of help they have given us to prepare for tonight's presentation. So some of the meeting goals tonight will be to provide an overview of LA County's voting solutions for all people, introduce the future of voting technology, voting options, and overall voter experience, explain the Vote Center ID process and results, share upcoming events and opportunities to engage, answer questions related to the voter experience and Vote Center locations, and to allow you, the attendees, to interact with outreach and comment, suggest Vote Center stations, which will be in the back. To begin, an overview with our voting solutions for all people. So Voting Solutions for All People was launched by the Los Angeles Registrar Recorder County Clerk, for short RRCC, to address an aging voting system and the complex needs of an electorate with more than 5.3 million voters in Los Angeles County. They have devised a system where it would be convenient, accessible, secure, with increased options. You will have the option as a voter for where, when, and how to vote. And the illustration here basically is the new system that has been devised for LA County, the ballot marking device, which is it's technology-based, as you can see, and it's similar to an iPad where everything is touch technology. Human-centered design is where Los Angeles County partnered with the Palo Alto firm called IDEO to create a voting system through a human-centered design process. IDEO was the first company that designed the mouse, the computer mouse as we know it. The design of the system for the ballot marking device was driven by the needs of LA County voters and to facilitate the voting experience for everyone. All of the components of the Voting Solutions for All People are publicly owned.
Would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me?
I do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office
of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
So help you God.
so help me God.
Voting is a fundamental part of our democracy. It's far more complicated and cumbersome than most realize. The voting system as we know it today is decades old, but at the end of the day, it's what keeps our government working. Where this started was a desire to create a voting experience that has the ability to measure up to the significance of voting. And I think what we're going to do here is take that to a whole nother level. As always, I'm really excited to be here. We're on the home stretch of this major milestone in the project. And you all are the reason for that, because of the people that we've brought together to make sure that we get this right. Anyone who looks into the background of IDEO will see that their history has shown that they've mastered this human-centered design part. They've got a proven model, and I think it was a great fit for this project.
What we're doing in Los Angeles County is incredibly revolutionary, and Dean is taking a major risk. And the risk isn't like that he's doing something wild and dangerous. The risk is that he's doing something radical to improve a fundamental part of our democratic system.
So there are no two elections that are alike. So I think in that sense they are messy, but I don't think they have to be as messy as they are today. I think that we have waited longer than we probably should have to try and design a system that fits more with the way things work in the modern world. As so many things in the public sector work, oftentimes you don't see those revolutions until there's a problem. And that started back in 2000 with the Bush v. Gore election. There was this rush to change the voting system then. I would argue that rush happened too fast, that nobody took the time to step back and look at it as a holistic problem. They looked at it solely as an equipment or a technology problem. What we're trying to do with this project is step back from that and say, wow, we have a shot here to do it and do it right.
Are you ready to print your ballot? This is your last chance to go back and make any changes.
What's been great about this project is that we have really pushed ourselves to free ourselves of the constraints of the current regulatory environment, the current technical environment, and the current even the current fiscal environment, and say, let's wipe off all of that from the table, and first let's figure out what a good experience ought to look like. Then we can go back and figure out what do we need to change in terms of regulations, what do we need in terms of funding, and what kind of technology do we need to make that happen.
In a lot of products you're designing for most users. For this voting machine, we're designing for all voters. And when you take a human-centered approach, that clarifies a lot, because you know that what you're first trying to do is make the experience work for humans. And once you know what humans want to do, that clarifies what the technical approach should be. And in certain cases where we need to push back on policy because policy is at odds with what voters actually want.
When we started this project, we started with about 42 hours of interviews with subject matter experts from all over Los Angeles, and they talked to us about all of the regulations that we would have to comply with in order to design a voting system. And we made a list of 868 design issues that we would have to be in compliance with, design constraints. We honestly thought there is no feasible way to get through all of the constraints of this project. Some of them are going to have to fall by the wayside, some community is going to lose.
Yeah, let's try a little bit bigger. You're doing really well. This is exactly why we're here, because we need to learn about what needs to be bigger.
We spent a lot of time with people who are living with really severe cerebral palsy, so very little fine motor and gross motor skills. And what was the most easy thing for them to use to vote? A touchscreen. So we found all of these moments where the same tool worked for incredibly disparate communities, and one simple, easy design actually made the whole thing more delightful for everyone.
When you take the needs of somebody who has access challenges and you figure out a solution to make voting easier for them, oftentimes that also makes voting easier for everybody. One of the things I think that is different about this project is that we were focusing very closely on certain types of users whose access challenges were not well served by the typical way that you would approach with the touchscreen voting. And we put a lot of effort into making an experience that works great for them.
Is it very important for me to vote? Absolutely. If we don't vote or exercise our democratic muscle, it's going to atrophy. So, challenges. Can I get in here? Maybe. Excuse me. Pardon me. Do you have Inca vote?
Accessibility, I think, is probably the best example, because people with multiple types of disabilities are all going to be able to vote, not on some special piece of equipment where they have to go to a separate corner of the polling place and vote and kind of be on display themselves, but they can go to any device, and that device will adapt to the individual needs of that voter. And I think that's going to fundamentally change voting.
When people go to vote, they don't expect the situation to be perfect. They don't expect it to be like Disneyland, but they do expect to see that our voting machine and our voting system has been sensitive enough to consider some of the really simple human truths about Los Angeles. For example, it should be multilingual like Angelinos are. It should fit people of all sizes like Angelinos are. It should work for someone who's 18, it should work for someone who is 118. And so a lot of the ways that we learned how to design the system wasn't by designing something that was perfect for everyone, but something that respected the basic human nature of every person who's going to come into the center. And I think that people really recognize when you've taken the time to design something for them.
We're trying to do this in a manner that results in a publicly owned, publicly operated system. Nobody's done that in the voting environment before. Most voting systems are proprietary, privately owned companies that sell voting equipment for profit. We're trying to break that mold. We're trying to do this in a way that expands that market rather than shrinking it.
One of the fundamental principles of our project was designing for modularity. And what that means is that each part of the voting system can be taken out and replaced with a new part. And the goal of that is to create a world in which we don't have to fear technological growth. In fact, we have the opportunity to swap things out for better things, for more affordable things, for more effective things as they come into the market, and we're assuming they will.
We also have designed into this the ability for you to access your sample ballot on a mobile device and to interact with that before the act of voting. So if you want to begin reviewing the ballot, get familiar with what's on it, pre-mark it in a way similar to the way you might check in for a flight and get a boarding pass electronically, you can do that as well. Take that with you when you go in to vote, scan it in, and then that'll get you an expedited voting experience.
Just thinking about the individuals I know who have always wanted to vote in person and have never been able to really know that they're going to have a way to do that and to have a private vote where they can be independent and not have to ask for help. I think it's amazing.
The thing that this new system makes possible is voting centers. And actually, voting centers might be the more important innovation.
The big change here is that we associate voting today with a random Tuesday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Voters want choice. They want the ability to go to a location they choose to vote that's convenient to them, that's comfortable for them. So instead of 4.8 million voters going each to a single location, now those 4.8 million voters can go to one of several hundred locations that are located throughout the county over a period of several days. Yeah, I think there is a lot of pressure on this project. There are a lot of people waiting to see what happens here. You know, it's a process that should always be improved. So I don't think you ever get to the ultimate solution. And I think I like that. I like the challenge of that, of how can we make it better? How can we continue to respond to the needs of voters and be sure that everyone has the opportunity for their voice to be heard?
So as you saw, you've been introduced to the new system that LA County has been working on for the last few years. The ballot marking device we just went over, just to go over it one more time for you to see how it is. The paper ballot that it prints needs to be verified by you, the voter, before you cast your final vote. And it has accessible features like we saw in the video, the ability to adjust font size, tilt the screen for a comfortable angle for you, and to adjust color and contrast. Option to use the audio ballot, there's an audio with it. It's an interface with a keypad to listen and navigate through the contests. Option to read or listen to your ballot in 13 different languages. That's something that LA County has added, which is a great benefit. And it allows for private and independent voting experience. And we just saw it's another video. This is a silent video, in case you didn't know. As you see, you're marking it and you're making your selections. As you make your selections, you go to the next screen and see what's available and do the same again until all of your entire ballot is completely done, and then you can print your ballot and verify it prior to casting the final vote. And that is it. Now the new, there's an interactive sample ballot, which you can use over your phone, just like as if you had an Apple Pay. As if you use your Apple Pay, if you use that, it's an option that voters can use at the vote center to help expedite the voting process. So you can have all of the information set up on your cell phone once you get there, and you have marked you can mark your sample ballot on that mobile device, and you can scan the poll pass on the ballot marking device to verify or make changes to the selections that you had made prior to casting your ballot. It expedites your voting process, basically. You're in and out within a minute or two, and you're done. Next, we have electronic poll books that have been introduced, are going to be introduced to us. As you all know, when you go to the voting site, there's a list of names. That's going to be replaced by the electronic poll books. They're calling it e-poll books. It replaces the list of voters. It will be used by vote center staff to verify registration eligibility of a voter in real time. It also enables conditional voter registration, which enables a voter to register and vote on the same day. So you can go there, register to vote if you haven't done so already, and cast your vote. It will also indicate if a voter has already voted anywhere in the county and will not allow voting at multiple locations. So if you say you were in Torrance, you voted, you come to Pasadena, you want to vote again, the system is faster. It will catch you. There's an improved vote by mail system or ballot. I'm sure a lot of you voted, saw it in the last general election last November, 2018. Well, it has a larger font, clearer instructions, And vote by mail or VBM drop boxes are placed in convenient locations throughout the county. They'll be available for 29 days prior to Election Day. And there's no postage necessary, which is a bonus. And we have an extended voting period now. LA County is granting us. Voting centers will be open up to 11 days, so you can vote. You have 11 days to vote, and there will be 2 weekends within those 11 days. So it's quite convenient. The VBM boxes, they will be located and available 30 days prior. So in essence, you have 29 days prior to Election Day to vote, and the 30th day will be the Election Day itself. So we have a totality of 30 days to cast our votes. Basically no excuse for anyone to say I was busy and couldn't do it. Vote centers will be open for a minimum of 8 hours per day. And there will also be pop-up and mobile vote centers if needed. The vote centers. A target of 1,000 conveniently located vote centers near your home, work, school, place of worship, library have been designated. It will allow voters to cast ballots at any vote center in the county. And it also allows for voters to register and vote on the same day. It may be located in a variety of facilities, including public buildings, workplaces, places of worship, and shopping centers.
The election is just around the corner, and Los Angeles County has a new way for voters to make their voices heard. New Los Angeles County vote centers are located throughout the county. Cast your ballot near your home, work, or favorite park. Voters can go anywhere. To find a vote center that's convenient, visit lavote.net and find one that works best for you. Instead of waiting for one day to vote, you are now able to vote across 11 days. Once you've arrived, a vote center assistant will greet you and check you in before taking you to the ballot marking device. Did you know that there is a new interactive sample ballot that lets you pre-mark your selections online and generate a poll pass? A unique QR code that will let you quickly transfer, review, and cast your selections on a paper ballot at the County Vote Center. The new ballot marking device includes an audio ballot, a touch screen, and a tactile keypad to make voting faster and more accessible. You can also select your language, change the font size, and adjust the contrast for easy viewing. Then, after you make your selections or scan your poll pass, you can review your ballot to verify your choices and cast your ballot by feeding the paper ballot back into the ballot marking device. There's no need to give your ballot to a vote center assistant. You cast it on the same device. Welcome to the future of voting in Los Angeles County. Fast, convenient, and easy. Go to vsap.lavote.net to exercise your right to vote and let your voice be heard.
Going to some of the rules and or acts that the state of California has come up with, the California Voters' Choice Act and its requirements. It requires that centers must be equally distributed across the county, must have voting equipment that are accessible to individuals with disabilities, and by doing so, there are minimum requirements to be considered. Proximity to public transportation is key. Another is proximity to population centers, proximity to low-income communities, accessible and free parking, distance and time a voter must travel by car to public transportation. So basically the state with this act has made it easy it has facilitated and has mitigated the voting process where people can have really no excuse not to go out and vote with this. It's made it very easy, and it encourages everyone to go and cast their ballot. election code and county operational requirements. A little tedious information there, but necessary nonetheless. As you can see, the ADA requirements, 32-inch wide doorways, ADA designated parking, free of internal barriers that impede wheelchair access, and minimum suitable room size is for those voting centers, if you will, or stations that we're going to have. If you have a small voting station with 1,000 square feet, there'll be 10 ballot marking devices, and it just goes up based on the square footage and size, with 50 being the maximum, I'm guessing. Yeah. So, other requirements that are important to consider: secure network connectivity, for electronic poll books. So any center that is designated as a station, voting station, they need to have secure connectivity for their electronic poll books to work properly. Power and electrical capacity to support the ballot marking devices, printers and equipment are also very important. And availability of all of this during the voting period. And this is a sample configuration of a large vote center with about 50 ballot marking devices set up the way you see it. Do you want to see it some more? Is this? And basically, the vote centers, once you arrive, the process is, as you can see in the diagram, you check in at the electronic poll book, receive your ballot, and go to the ballot marking device, cast your vote, and follow up with the instructions. You cast, and then item 7 is the very much coveted I voted sticker. Yeah. I know a lot of you may have questions. If kindly, if you don't mind, for you to wait until the presentation is over, then you can shoot away. Thank you so much. The vote center ID identification process and the list of potential vote centers is next. Okay, so the LA County, for them to identify the most suitable locations for vote centers, they have conducted extensive research and analysis of potential facilities and have conducted public outreach that identified where voters would prefer to vote. So here you see an illustration of what they've done. They've put together focus groups and conducted surveys. They have done on-site facility assessments, received input from public agencies, hosted community meetings, set up an online portal, all to go into a database of potential vote center locations for them to choose from. PlaceWorks and Registrar Recorder County Clerk conducted 8 focus groups throughout the past year, I'm guessing. And with nearly 2,500 surveys with registered and potential voters in Los Angeles County. Participants discussed some of the things that you see before you, preferred types of facilities in which people would prefer to vote in, preferences to vote center locations in relation to where people live, work, and recreational activities, preferred days of week, and time to vote. Participants feel most comfortable voting at public libraries, public schools, city halls, places of worship, community and recreation centers. Site visits were conducted to ground truth all potential vote centers. Basically, the county sends its dedicated teams to look at the centers, measure them, check for accessibility, ADA-wise, parking and access barriers, verify on-site and area conditions, and discuss facility availability, programming, and willingness to participate. And basically, ground truth is where they make final analysis of where the appropriate centers are, and thereby they designate those for the public to vote in when election time arrives. Input from public agencies. Los Angeles County has received a myriad or endless input from various city clerks from various cities in LA County and staff departments. City clerks also reviewed the facilities and provided their own feedback to LA County based on firsthand experience. With assistance of these public agencies, LA County has nearly received 5,000 feedback on 5,000 different facilities which they can use. And they've also received feedback from the rest of them, LA County board offices, down throughout the list. The county has received 265 suggested facilities during the first round of community meetings, which were held last year around November, December. The Registrar Recorder's Office collaborated with community partners who conducted outreach and facilitated meetings. 33 such meetings throughout the county will be the total number that will take place from here until 2020. Last year, those were last year, the 33 meetings. So this year this is the second round, and we have as many, if not more. They'll learn about California Voter Choice Act and the Vote Center Assessment Process, comment on and suggest potential facilities using comment cards, and tell us about community characteristics such as traffic, lighting, and parking conditions. LA County has also put up its own portal, placement portal, which is a web-based platform where the public can review current submitted vote centers, the status as rejected or under consideration. So you can go to their website and take a look and basically get educated on all the information regarding this. And comment on proposed vote centers, suggest new vote centers sites, share why a facility would or would not make a good vote center. So all of the facilities they have been looking for, they have been ranked and scored, and identifying 2,000 viable vote center locations and 250 dedicated VBM drop-off locations. So the original 1,000 has already been designated. The county is looking to facilitate even further by doubling that number to 2 and making it 2,000 facilities. We don't know. We will find out later on during the year once that has been completed. Final selections will also incorporate public feedback, programming barriers, readiness of facility, ADA mitigation needs. And they're trying to dedicate 250 VBM drop-off locations versus what they have now, which is 150. And as you can see, the cluster on the map of LA County, 2,000 potential vote centers. I think this illustration is up back there, so you can take a look at it towards the rear of the room to the right. As for our area, we are Focus Area 8, Pasadena, Altadena. The Army National Committee works in this area with 57 potential local vote centers, and this is the cluster within our designated area, or focus area, if you will. Now, examples of potential vote centers. There's a long list of vote centers. These are some of the examples that we have chosen to show you. So, Pasadena Community Center. What kind of a place is it? Public facility, and it is a large facility. Therefore, it will accommodate around 50 ballot marking devices. There's Church of Our Savior, which has also been dedicated by LA County as a voting station. It's a place of worship, and it's a small facility. The Arboretum in Arcadia, it's a medium-sized facility. Paseo, Colorado, right across the street. The shopping center, it has a large area to accommodate people and ballot marking devices. There's also San Marino High School, which is a public school from K through 12, and it's a medium-sized, and South Pasadena War Memorial Building, and that's a medium-sized. So these are some of the facilities we just chose to show you, so you'll get an idea as to how accommodating they would be size-wise. Facility recruitment process. Okay, county staff is conducting a comprehensive assessment of facilities, including accessibility, electrical capacity, and network infrastructure. So based on that, they'll be choosing new centers or stations. The vote center suggestion process is ongoing, and identification will be an ongoing process in every election. Public is encouraged to be involved in finding the most viable and accessible vote center sites of the 2020 elections and beyond. So we have suggestion cards and comment cards in the back. Once we're done, once all the presentation is over and the questions have been answered, you can always go back there and make your suggestions for facilities that you know that could be viable. And here it is to provide comments and or suggestions for potential vote center locations. You may visit the Suggest Comment Station and experience the online web portal, or leave a comment card. So you can go back there shortly and do that, or you can do it online, or you can visit the online portal anytime at placeworkscivic.com/project/LA-VCPP, or visit the lavote.net website. You can also email suggestions and comments. So LA County has given us 1,001 options for us to comment on, to give them suggestions and to help out in this in their endeavor. So upcoming events. In September, and the date is there, 28, 29, there's going to be a mock election with those ballot marking devices available in 50 vote centers throughout LA County, and people are welcome to go and take a look at them and use them and see how it is. It's going to allow you to interact with the new technology. There will be demo centers as well in October, from October to January of 2020. October 2019 to January 2020, with simulated vote centers where the public can see and interact with the new voting equipment. It will be open on weekdays and weekends at various locations throughout LA County. Election administration plan, still under upcoming events, outlines the plan for voter education and the list of vote centers. A draft plan will be presented through a public meeting and allow for comments. Final plan must be submitted to the California Secretary of State. And full implementation in 2020, presidential primary election. In 2020, the first vote centers will open in February 22nd, and election day is March the 3rd. Ballot marking device, or BMD for short, as we like to call it, Interactive sample ballot and electronic poll books will be available countywide. So stay engaged through the websites and email address. I'll give you a few seconds to get it down. And here we are to our questions and answers session. Just to give you a heads up, the first video that we saw where Registrar Recorder Dean Logan was explaining as to how they have come up with the system and why and the benefits of it. That video is also available on YouTube. Yeah, and all of the other videos as well, just FYI. All right. And we'll be taking your questions. Yes, Jeff Klein from LA County will be coming up to answer all of your questions. Thank you so very much for your patience and for paying attention. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks so much. Hello. All right, thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions people have, whether about vote centers or the overall project. So I believe with the mics going around, if you hold up your hand, they'll bring a mic over.
Hello?
Okay.
How far in advance of March 3rd, 2020 will the voting center locations be announced?
That's a good question. The exact date, I don't have that. We're still working that out. We're working on getting the final list of the 1,000 locations. So right now, as described in the presentation, we have a list of 2,000 potential locations, and that's what we're looking to get our final 1,000. So the final list will be hopefully for us internally finished by September, and then they'll have to go back over it and we'll do some final checks and so forth. In terms of announcing it as voting locations, that will be sometime early 2020.
Hi, first of all, thanks for doing this. This is an excellent meeting. Question about the vote by mail system that you're putting in. You had mentioned you're going to have drop-off boxes around for that and no postage required. Does that mean you're eliminating voting by mail and only using the drop boxes, or are you doing both?
That's a great question, and first off, thank you for being here. Wouldn't have a meeting without you and everyone else here, so I appreciate that. So the overall project is not about taking any options away from anyone. This is about adding convenience, adding more options, more availability. So if you are a vote by mail voter, you're a permanent vote by mail voter, for example, you still will get your vote by mail ballot. You can return it any number of ways. You can mail it in, it'll be postage paid. Some people prefer to not mail it in, and that's where the drop boxes will come in handy. They'll be able to take it over to a drop box, and then also you'll be able to drop it at a vote center just like you could drop it off at a polling place right now.
So still postage paid you for the U.S. mail service?
Correct.
Great. Thanks.
Hi, thank you for having this meeting. With California normally being the last state in the union to declare the results, with this new system that's going to be in place, will the time be lessened?
So that's a good question. I don't know if we are technically the last. We do have the longest canvass period, so that does sometimes cause California to be a little bit later than other states. So that canvass period will still be in place. We may wrap it up. Normally, the canvass period is about 30 days, and we normally need the full 30 days in order to process the election. There's a lot of actions such as checking signatures on vote by mail ballots, provisional. One thing that we're excited about is the new VSAP model will reduce drastically, possibly even 90%, we don't really have an exact number, but significantly reduce the number of provisional ballots. Two main reasons people vote provisionally are, number one, someone shows up with their vote by mail ballot, or someone shows up and they're noted as a vote by mail voter, but they do not have their vote by mail ballot. Under the new model, we can cancel their vote by mail ballot and issue them a normal ballot, so they will not vote provisional. And the second reason people vote provisionally primarily is they show up at what's called the wrong polling place, but now under the new model, you can vote anywhere, so there'll be no more wrong polling place. Those two will go away, so we will have a minimal number of provisionals. The provisional process will still be in place because you need to have that process in place. So we're hoping administratively there'll be less burden on us, which might allow us to wrap up the post-election processing. Also, the new tally system will allow us to be more efficient with how we process. We're going to be prepping ballots over the entire 11-day period. And so a lot of the prep work that goes into checking in-person ballots will get taken care of ahead of time. So we are confident and we feel that it will possibly get the results in quicker and then allow us to shore up the length of time. No guarantees, we'll have to see how it rolls out, but that's how we envision it.
Yeah, so I'd like to know, when someone comes in to vote, how do you know that the name that they give you is truly that person and it's not someone who's moved or has passed away or is just someone who shouldn't be voting?
Okay, so under the current model, we will still administer the election the same way it's administered before. So currently, you show up at the polling place, you give your name and address, and you sign the roster. That will still be the same process under the vote center model, the VSAT model. You'll show up, you'll give your name and address, a vote center worker will look you up in the electronic poll book, and then there's a signature pad where you will sign just like you signed right now. In terms of any other administrative requirements, that's something that has to take place at the state level, and that requires state election code change. So we're just the agency that administers the election. We don't establish the laws. So I always recommend contacting your state legislator if you want to discuss some of those state level changes. Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one is, if we're going to have 1,000 vote centers across the county, how many fewer polling places is that from what we have now in the current neighborhood model? And what's the distance that one would have to travel from their current sort of neighborhood polling place to now these new vote centers?
Sure, that's a good question. So the one thing I always try to point out is actually, even though the raw number is less, so for example, for a large election, a normal size election for LA County, we have close to 5,000 polling places. It usually comes in about 4,800. But you have to remember, you're only able to vote at one of those 5,000 locations. Under the new model, over the 11-day period, you'll be able to vote at any of the 1,000 locations. So while it seems like it's fewer locations, you actually have more options and more places where you can vote. The proximity to where you live, it's going to just depend on the neighborhood and where they're placed. The other great advantage about this new model is we have a lot more flexibility. So currently, with a polling place, we have one per precinct. Usually, sometimes we have something called a neighborhood voting center, which sort of combines a few precincts. But for simplicity's sake, you have one per precinct. We actually have the option, if we feel an area is really busy, we can put 2 vote centers in there. So just to give you an example, in downtown Los Angeles, we've talked about putting 2 different vote centers in because, people will be leaving work maybe at one end of downtown LA. We want it to be accessible for those voters, and then maybe maybe in the financial district, we might have another vote center. So we have a lot more flexibility. All of our decision making is based on data, research, what voters have expressed in terms of where they want to vote and where they prefer to vote. Did that answer your question? Okay, great.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to know if there's going to be any sort of public information rollout or any sort of mailers to explain this to people. I mean, I've learned a lot by being here this evening, but there are a whole lot of people who didn't even know that this meeting was happening, much less know about all these changes.
Sure. Actually, that's a great point, and that's something we talk about every day that I'm in the office. I'm the manager over civic engagement for the county, so that's something I think about every waking minute pretty much. And we depend on partnerships like this, help you and everyone here helping to get the word out. Did you know about the new voting system, the changes? We'll come out and do presentations with organizations. So that's a lot of on the ground work. As you saw, we have a mock election coming up. We'll have demo centers coming up. We're doing a lot of digital media, traditional media, radio ads. But you have to remember that LA County is the largest voting jurisdiction in the country. We have over 5 million voters registered in LA County. We have more voters in LA County than 44 states have statewide. So it's a big challenge for us to roll out a countywide change. So we're really seeking these partnerships in addition to all the media that we're doing. So, you know, if you have some ways that we can get in touch with other organizations and groups and we can really keep building and building and building. One thing I was really excited about is we actually did an event recently and a person came up to our table who I hadn't ever met before, and we said, oh, have you heard about VSAP? And he said, oh, actually, I have heard about this, which was great to hear because that means our message is actually getting out. So as we get closer to 2020, there'll be a lot more of that, and hopefully the word will spread. But we want to keep this conversation going, so if anyone here has any suggestions, or you want me to come out to an organization or any one of my team members come out to your organization, happy to do that. We've done about 150 presentations already, and we're trying to get as many as possible.
Hi. I was registered last election and my name didn't appear on the list.
Mm-hmm.
So will your provisional ballot also be digital, or how would that work if that happens again?
So that's a great point you brought up. I think it's no secret that we had some issues, printing errors last election. It was made big headlines. Under the new model, that issue wouldn't even have occurred because you'd have the option to well, one, it was a printing error, so your name was still in the database, but the paper roster just didn't reflect that. So under our new model, we would look in the database and we see you there, so that wouldn't, you know, if that situation occurred again, we wouldn't have that same problem. Moreover, with conditional voter registration, if there's some issue and you thought you registered and it never went through, or we don't find you in there, we can register you conditionally and issue you a ballot the same day. In terms of provisional processing, since that was part of your question, if you vote provisionally, the only difference is it'll go inside a pink envelope just like right now, but you'll still use the same ballot marking device. It'll still be a paper ballot and so forth. Okay.
Hi, so I have a couple questions. So, mechanical questions. So if you enter a polling place and you're checked in on the e-poll book, are you assigned to a particular kiosk, or you can go to any of the dozens of kiosks that are in there?
You can go to any of them.
Okay, so then the next question is, you're handed a blank piece of paper, I guess, which you're calling a ballot, and you take it to the kiosk and the results are printed on it. Is that what you count?
Yes, the election will be tallied off the paper ballot.
Off the paper ballots that are printed out. So you can't take it home with you, you have to turn it in.
Exactly. So when you hit cast, it'll then go into the ballot marking device, and there's a ballot box on it.
So it's printed out and you collect that, and because it's printed in a pre-approved format, you can scan it and count it much quicker. So the kiosk, do you collect any information from the kiosk itself? Do you collect any voting information from it, or is it just really for marking only?
Correct. So the ballot marking device doesn't actually store any information. The only thing it has inside are all the ballot groups throughout LA County. Okay. So it knows your specific ballot for your home precinct when you show up to vote.
So last question, if you're gonna allow people to generate a QR code and cast a vote that way, is the QR code voter specific? That is, do you have to put in your voter ID, or how do you make a QR code? How do you prevent somebody from coming in and saying, I'm Bradley Smith, signing your book, and somebody has given that person a QR code printed on a piece of paper, right? Mm-hmm. And they walk over to the kiosk and they hold the QR code under the scanner, and they're basically by using a QR code, you're possibly allowing someone else to mark ballots. Now that was always the case with vote by mail. I could take your ballot away and mark your ballot, but you couldn't do that in a polling station. But now if people are handing out QR codes, and the QR codes are not voter specific, they still have to be specific to that ballot group, obviously, because you guys have, how many ballot groups do you have? Like zillions, probably.
Yeah, there's about 500 or so in LA. Right. It just depends on how many contests.
So as long as you had a ballot, as long as you had a one that was properly oriented. How do you keep that from happening? How do you keep people?
Sure. So just I guess to clarify, the interactive sample ballot is what you're referring to. So you generate this QR code. It only pre-populates your ballot. You still have to hit cast. It's tied to your ballot group, to where you're registered. But it's not the same QR code that we would use to tally the election. It just pre-populates it. So you could think about it, this is a really simple way to think about it. Right now you get a paper sample ballot booklet, right? If you gave me your paper sample ballot booklet and I marked it and gave it back to you, you still have to input all the choices, confirm them, and hit cast. So it's an electronic version of that. It's not your actual vote, and it won't count as your vote.
I know, but by using a QR code, you make it very fast and painless. So if I gave somebody who was walking in there a QR code, they wouldn't have to do anything but hit cast, right? They scan it and hit cast, right?
It would have to be tied to their specific ballot group and their precinct.
As long as you gave a QR code that was tied to the ballot group for the person whose name you're using, right?
Sure, people hand out slate mailers and those sort of things all the time where people take those into the
But the difference here, though, is that it's much quick. By using a pre-printed QR code, it's much quicker.
So exactly. So we want to make it more convenient and easier for people to vote. You still, again, unless you have to hit the cast button to cast your ballot, you still have to confirm. Also, when you upload your selections from your interactive sample ballot, you have the ability to make changes, to go back. It doesn't set anything. It's not set in stone. You can go back and make all the changes. Maybe you generated your QR code for your interactive sample ballot 3 weeks ago and you decided you wanted to make some changes. So it's just a more convenient way of marking your ballot, because the one thing to remember is in 2020, it's going to be the first election where LA City is combined with the presidential ballot. So it's going to be extremely long, and it might take someone 20 minutes to go through their ballot. Some people may want to get through it a lot quicker.
So if somebody's filling out a sample ballot, I mean, presumably they're getting the sample ballot somehow from the county.
They always get it from the county.
And in order to have the right ballot grouping, it's got to be voter specific, right?
Correct.
So you're going on, I guess you would go on in the same way you get your sample ballot from the county right now in a PDF. You get a download on an app.
Yeah, so it would be an interactive PDF, essentially.
Okay, so therefore the QR code could be voter specific. You could encode their voter ID onto it.
No, it doesn't have any voter ID. It's just listed, it's just your specific ballot, but not your specific voter ID.
No, I'm saying when you generate the QR code, you could put a voter ID inside that data.
I'm not going to really get into the technical side of it too much because that's not my expertise, but I can tell you what it doesn't how it's set up, and it does not have the voter ID. What we can do in the future, obviously, we'll see how that plays out, but in terms of how it's structured right now, it's just an electronic version of your booklet. Okay.
I think
wait a second. I want to make one more point. By not printing the voter ID as part of the QR code, then somebody can print 500 QR codes and have people walk in and just, pose as people and just put their QR code and hit cast and walk out.
Well, you still have to sign in, get your ballot, and receive a ballot. So that's people hand out slate mailers, they hand out cards that suggest who to vote for and things like that. It's pretty much the same as what goes on right now. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I guess he spoke to some of my questions, which were about what was being collated and just security in general. This database, who is like securing all these networks on all these different polling places? Is that the city or independent contractors or what?
Do you mean the e-poll book where we go into the voter database?
Yeah, who's doing all the security for this?
So the county is in charge of the security.
Okay.
And then we'll have a third-party cybersecurity firm that will also do 24-hour monitoring of our voter database to make sure that there's no intrusions and tampering and so forth. Okay.
I can hold it. Hi, thank you. Thank you all for coming here. It's clear that everybody here cares about the election and keeping our democracy intact. So thank you. I just want to thank you all for coming. My first question is that your presentation was great, but nothing was said about the poll workers or the staff that will be running each place. What are we going to do about that?
Sure. So yeah, we don't really get into the staffing because this is more about vote centers, the physical locations, but happy to answer that question. So the current way we staff polling places, I'm not sure if everyone knows, we use 25,000 poll workers for every election. So it's a lot of people. We won't need quite that many. I believe it's around 20,000 people. And it'll be over a different period of time because there'll be 250 vote centers initially, and then it'll build up to 1,000 for the last 4 days. So the structure of our poll worker staffing right now will be very similar to the vote center model. It'll be a combination of county poll workers. It'll be student poll workers. You may or may not be aware about 20% of our current poll workers are actually students. So county poll workers, student poll workers, and then community volunteers, which make up the vast majority of our poll workers. So people will work not just one day, they'll work over a period of days. So some people may work the entire period if that's their availability and they're able to do that. Some people may only work 3 days. And so the final tweaks on that staffing model are still being worked out, but that's the overall big picture. The one thing I really like, and I always like to add this about staffing when it comes up, because we're rethinking everything, it also allows us to rethink how we staff the vote centers. And what that means is when you have 25,000 people anywhere, there's some who are great, some who aren't so great, and then the vast majority of them do a pretty good job, right? So we can actually focus more training because you're having higher expectations and more of a commitment from the workers. We believe that'll lead to better service for the voters, and I think that's something that everyone really wants.
When will you start hiring or accepting volunteer poll workers?
If you're interested, you can send me the information. We're collecting it internally. They haven't yet gotten to the point where they're coming up with a formal process, but we are saving at least initial interest. We've gotten a number of people who've been interested. So I'll give you my card afterwards and you'd be happy to contact me. But they will start looking at making calls for people who would be interested starting in about August or September. So just at least initial calls. It takes a lot of time to start getting through all the individuals.
Yes, quick question. Do you have this slide available, a digital slide available on the website somewhere where we can actually download it and preview it again later?
I don't believe so. It is, yeah, okay. So yeah, it is available. Everything we produce is available to the public. So I'll give you my card and I'll help you find it if you can't find it. And then we have a lot of other materials. So yes, it is available. And we actually could come out and do a presentation too if you have a group you'd like.
Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, does the voting, when it tabulates the paper ballot, is it a tabulation machine? Does it automatically tabulate and collect all the tabulations of the votes that day?
That's a good question. So how the process will work, every day ballots will come back from the vote center. There's a whole chain of custody and security process.
Right.
There's an integrated ballot box on the back of each ballot marking device. Those will be brought back by registrar staff, and then on election day we will utilize sheriffs as we currently do. So all the ballots come back to our central tally area. There's a lot of prep work that goes into getting the ballots ready for tally, so a lot of that prep work will take place in advance, very similar to how we prep vote-by-mail ballots right now. And then they'll go ahead and send them through the tally machines, and the tally essentially holds on to that information because we can't actually count anything before 8 p.m. on election night. So once 8 p.m. comes on election night, it's not really a switch, but you could think about it as a switch where we hit the tally, and everything we've prepped up to that point can be counted. And that goes back to my point earlier, how we believe that this will lead to getting results in quicker on election night.
So just to clarify, nothing's a vote until you start counting votes at 8 p.m., right?
Correct.
So, okay, got
Yep.
it. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm happy to hear, I'm a county employee, I'm happy to hear you're going to keep the county poll worker program. I really appreciate that opportunity to serve people, outside of my office. So
you'll do the 11 days then, right?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, my boss probably wouldn't like that.
Okay.
But in terms of the 1,000 vote centers, how many of them are you planning on doing in terms of all 11 days versus a shorter number of days? And I have another question to follow up on that.
So the law has a specific requirements on how many we have to have starting 10 days before and how many starting 3 days before. in all cases, in terms of what the law requires, LA County is actually going above and beyond the minimum numbers, because we believe that this system needs to be more accessible than just what the law requires. So how many we'll have and sort of where the 11-day versus the 4-day will be placed, that's good. We're determining that right now. A lot of it may be due to availability. Some of it's going to be due to data and research that we've done. So I can't give you a specific number, but that's sort of the narrative that you could think about.
And kind of following up on that QR code thing is that I think that, you know, right now you mentioned that slate mailers have slate mailers, paper slate mailers, but it is possible then that a slate mailer could have a QR code printed on that an individual could then just vote that, you know, without even, and press a button and just submit it. And I think there is some concern amongst many of us that, you know, we see slate mailers being used, that, you know, that people just vote slate mailers blindly. And I don't know if, you know,
Sure.
It seems that that possibility is open.
So again, I think the important part, and I totally hear the concern that, you know, people will maybe not realize what they're doing. The one thing we really want to emphasize, and this will be part of our education and outreach plan when we really start getting into the weeds with voters, and we've started that already, but there's going to be obviously a more significant push. One, we can't control what the campaigns and the private sector does in terms of, you know, how they look at the technology and try to utilize that to their advantage, right? We know campaigns are very creative. The one thing that I really want to stress is that uploading your results is just a review process. You can still make the changes. You still have to confirm and you still have to hit cast. That's really on the voter to make sure that they're responsible for their ballot and what they're marking. So you have to hit confirm and you have to hit cast.
Hi, change is hard. Changing something like this on a statewide, or let alone LA County, is very difficult, and the word's not going to get out to everybody, right? So a lot of people will not realize that you have 11 days to vote. They'll forget about the first 10. They'll show up on the last day to vote. So there's going to be two issues with that. First of all, overload at these voting centers, which are now fewer than there were before in terms of places to vote, but also you have now dependence on these electronic poll books, which if they fail or the network fails to it, what do you do then? What's your backup?
Sure. So those are great points. One, it's true, you can't really control voter behavior and if people got the message or not. I can tell you we're spending a lot of money. We're going to do everything possible because that is one of our biggest concerns, right? If everyone waits until election day to vote just like they vote now, there's going to be huge lines and then everyone will say, why did you move to vote centers, or worse, right? So we're aware of that, and that's why we're doing mock election, the demo centers, multi-million-dollar media campaign, postcards to every voter, advising of the changes. We have even a flyer that we're going to give to every single political campaign because everyone has to file paperwork through our office. So we say, this is what your voters need to know when you're talking to your supporters. Make sure you let them know there's 11 days of voting, vote early, so forth. So we're trying to really leverage everything we possibly can, in addition to doing meetings like this and us going out into events and so forth. So that's the outreach part of it, and it's only going to increase as we keep going. In terms of the backup for the electronic poll book, we will have multiple, so it's not going to just be one at one facility, and then the breakdown is probably going to be one electronic poll book for every 3 ballot marking devices, so there will be a number of them. So if the battery dies on one or one fails, we're not shorthanded. But if there's a system-wide failure, there is a backup where it freezes every once in a while the voter database, whatever state it's at in terms of updates, things like that, will get saved to the hard drive of the electronic poll book. So then we'll know if someone's already come in and voted, it'll have a hard copy on the actual device. And then folks can vote provisionally so voting won't stop. And then once the poll books come back online, we can update them via who's voted. Yeah.
It seems like there's a single point of failure, though, which is the wire that goes in the building for the network, wherever the polling location is, though, right? So if that one wire gets pulled out, you lose the whole place.
I mean, we're right now doing a lot of network testing and so forth, so it's not going to be just like, oh, I can unplug it and shut the whole thing down. It's not really set up that way. and again, I don't like to get into the technical side of it because I'm not an IT person, but we are working with our own internal IT security division. We work with the county IT security. The state has IT security. We're also in touch with the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, who all have their own cyber security specific to elections. So there's a lot of effort being put into it. The law has certain requirements as well. So we feel confident that the security and the technical side of it it'll work really well. It'll protect the election, the integrity of the election, but it's something we always have to remain vigilant on, so we don't take it lightly. It's the number one concern for our office because we want to protect people's information. The really good thing about the last comment I want to make about IT security is the electronic poll books are separated from the tally system. So there's no internet connection, wireless or Bluetooth for the ballot marking devices. So that's how the tally and the votes are protected.
But there is for the electronic poll
Sure,
books.
for people's voter information, correct.
Well, for the electronic poll books, they're also connected dependent on the network at the facility they're in, and you don't control those facilities. They're controlled by schools and community centers and churches and things like that, right? So
Well, we'll be implementing our own security when we use them, so we're not going to be relying on the school security.
So you're going to put in your own networks at these locations, including the physical network?
Correct.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we're actually have people out in the field every day right now going to the list of 2,000 locations, and that's one of the things they're working on, is seeing, can we put our own network in here, will this work for us? And if it won't, we're not going to use it.
I also have multiple issues here. I think you touched on this before, but if you would reiterate that interim results are not going to be released. There are not going to be results coming out along the way, right?
By law, no results can be released before 8 p.m. on election night.
Okay, thanks. I needed that.
No problem.
And how would poll watchers do their GOTV work, do you think?
Yeah, good question. That's been coming up a lot lately because as we get closer and people are starting to think about that. So currently, you're referring to the street index, correct? The list that hangs at the door and people check to see who's voting. So that paper system will go away because voters are going to be voting anywhere in the county, so the paper process doesn't work. There'll be an online portal that campaigns will have access to, and they'll be able to look up their supporters. By law, we are required to offer some way that campaigns and others who do the election work, GOTV work, have an opportunity to be able to look that up. So we're going to create an online portal.
Thank you. And this is where my suspicious mind really comes in.
Okay.
I'm sorry for your arm. What if, you seem like a very open person and want people to participate, but
Sure. Try to be.
What if we were to fall into the circumstance where there were people in charge who decided there didn't need to be so many polling places, or they didn't need to be open over here, they could only be there? What are the safeguards for us in that case?
So their law does require certain minimums. So there's never going to be a situation where someone's like, oh, well, we'll only have 3 in LA County. That would be impossible because we'd be sued and that wouldn't work out. We also have, I think, the relationships we've built throughout the county. We partner with the cities a lot. We have a lot of stakeholders involved in this. This has been a true community partnership. It's actually been a 10-year project. This started out with some data from Caltech and MIT and grew out of there. And it's become a true partnership. Our advisory committee are all community stakeholders who are experts in the elections field. We have a technical advisory committee. So it's not just unilateral decisions made by the registrar's office, and that's our model that will only grow as we move forward. You saw the video, the 10-minute video of all the partners up there working together. So I understand the concern because people worry about someone with that wand deciding, making the final decision on everything. There's a lot of safeguards built into all of it, and we'll never get to that point. The numbers might fluctuate, but there is a requirement by law to have a certain minimum. And our philosophy in LA County, predating this project, has always been to have more accessible or more available options for voting rather than less. Thank you. Good question.
Yes, I wanted to know the training for the poll workers. How extensive is it, and do they have to take like a test or a practicum to show they know what they're doing? And
Yes.
Then, and then, well,
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, there will be testing involved. We do a little bit of that right now, so we'll build upon what we do right now. It'll be a little more extensive, and the training will be more extensive for sure.
and then I wanted to know, it seems like all of this electronic, there are many people who are not comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So are you still going to give an option of getting a paper book for some of the people who are not computer literate at all?
Yeah, so we're, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're about expanding options, not taking options away. So you're talking about the sample ballot booklet, correct? So yeah, if you just want to get the sample ballot booklet by paper and you don't want to use the interactive sample ballot, you don't have to do that. You can still you can mark your paper booklet, you can walk it in, you can make your selections. In terms of people not being comfortable with technology, we understand that there are people who fear technology and are not comfortable. We're going to overstaff the vote centers at least for the first election. We're going to have staff dedicated to just assisting people with using the ballot marking devices. But I have actually a really good story real quick to tell related to this. In 2018, 5 counties went to the vote center model. It was Madera, Sacramento, San Mateo, Napa, and Nevada. I went to the Madera County, and I ran one of their vote centers. They use a different voting device, but they use the vote center model where people can go anywhere. And so the really interesting thing in Madera is that county, for whatever reason, decided to have 2 kinds of voting systems. It's a little redundant, but that was their choice. They had one where you mark pen and paper, just like our vote-by-mail ballot is. And they had a new touch screen similar to ours, but not exactly the same. So people who came in, we'd ask them, do you want to use the old way or do you want to use the new fancy touch screens that we have? And most people say what we would all expect. No, just give me the old way. I don't want to mess with this new technology. Mostly older voters, right? Who, they like pen and paper. And I would tell people, well, it's actually better if you use the touch screen, and they'd say, why? And I'd say, well, one, if you make a mistake, you don't have to bring the ballot back to me. Because if you make a mistake with pen and paper, you're going to have to come back, and then you have to remark the whole thing. 2, it prevents overvoting. You may not be aware, but 10% of the ballots in LA County have an overvote. An overvote is when you vote for too many selections than you're allowed to. So if you vote for 2 for president, your presidential vote gets canceled out. So 10% of the ballots in LA County under our current model have overvotes. And so the ballot marking devices really prevent overvotes. And so same thing with the new touchscreen devices in Madera. So they said, okay, I'll try the new devices. And they went, and they tried, and they came back. I guarantee you 100% of the people said, wow, I love that. That was really easy to use. And our device is even more intuitive. There were a number of different prototypes developed, or iterations developed, and they came up with the prototype. It's a very easy device to use, but I think there's a fear of technology. So we'll have people there to help someone get started, but once people start using it, I think they'll realize, oh, this is actually pretty easy. I like to say it's actually, if you can use an ATM machine, it's actually easier to use than an ATM machine. So you got a story with your question.
I know.
Okay.
Oh, all right. I've been a polling place for many years, La Cañada Flint Ridge Country Club. I have a lot of space, and I've already been interviewed by two of your crew to analyze the situation. Will you have the same amount of furniture per polling place? Example, they have a check-in table, they have an information table, they have a handicap station, they have several kiosks. Will that remain the same?
So there'll be some changes. You'll have the check-in where the e-poll books will be. The great thing about our new system is because it's voting solutions for all people, meaning it's designed for everybody, you don't need the voters with disabilities booth. You don't need these disparate booths. Everything is combined into the one device. So you'll have your check-in station, you'll have your ballot marking devices, you'll have a station where people can come in and drop off their vote-by-mail ballots, which will have a standalone ballot box. And in fact, if someone doesn't want their ballot to go back into the ballot marking device, they can walk it over to the standalone ballot box. So it'll be more streamlined. The philosophy overall will still be intact, but it'll be a more streamlined process. And then we'll still have that kiosk, of course, and the signs.
Will setup and takedown be the same?
It'll be different. We'll probably set up before the days before leading up to the voting period. So if it's a 4-day vote center, maybe on the 5th or 6th day before election day, and then it'll break down afterwards, so we'll come back and get the equipment later, because we're gonna use our warehouse team to do all the setup of the heavier equipment.
Will you be giving, we will be giving a banquet space to have this in our club.
Oh, great.
Will you be paying the same amount of money to the club or other entities for the use of their facility?
I don't know the answer to that, and I stay away from the money questions. So I can find out for you, though, but that's not really my area of expertise.
Okay. In voting by mail, it seems to me you can vote at home, but your printer prints out the ballot which you mail. Is that correct?
That's remote accessible vote by mail, so that's for voters who, not the traditional vote by mail ballot that most people use. If you use something called RAVBM, remote accessible vote by mail, that's for voters with disabilities it's similar to a vote by mail, but it's a little bit different and it does print something.
Because I'm a vote by mail, but I vote in person because for some reason I got messed up.
And we can change that under the new model. If you show up and you're like, I'm not a vote by mail voter, we can actually make those changes.
Okay. And do you provide the facilities that you select, do they need to have Wi-Fi? Was that?
Yes, so we'll be able to put that in. They have certain basic minimums that we need to have, but we're going to be having control over the Wi-Fi, the wireless network, and it's a secured network that we'll be overseeing. So there is some basic minimums. I'm not an IT person, so I don't really get into that.
And I can vote at home on a temporary ballot at home using my smartphone, and then bringing my smartphone to the polling place and vote that way?
So I always like to clarify, you're not actually voting using the interactive sample ballot. You're pre-marking your ballot, your sample ballot, and you're bringing that in, and then you're uploading your selections to your actual ballot.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pre-marking.
Okay.
It's the best way to think of it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Can I do a time check? Okay, so we're here till 8, right? Okay, great.
Okay, hi, I have a question. Regarding conditional voting, the way that it's currently set up, you are only able to do that in Norwalk, is that correct?
Conditional voter registration, right now, you can only do it in Norwalk or our early voting sites, the weekend early voting. Under the new model, we will be able to do it at any vote center.
Okay. In that context then, is there any type of a receipt that a voter would receive for their ballot? Is there any kind of documentation that they receive that's like your current tearaway on the paper ballot? Is there something like that that the voter would receive digitally?
So this question comes up a lot. It's a really good question, and I think people have the wrong impression of that stub. The stub actually doesn't tie to your ballot. There is a number on top. It's actually a stocking number for our inventory. By law, we're actually not allowed to link anything to someone's ballot because it has to be an anonymous ballot.
So in terms of like when you can check online now if your vote has been counted, is there any kind of oversight in terms of like how you would do that now? Is it the same type of system where you can go in and check to see if your vote's been counted, or is there any way to validate your vote and have something to point to?
So the check online is actually vote by mail to see if we've received it, and then there is a provisional check to see if your provisional was counted or not. In terms of in-person voting, that's not, either one of those. So voting, there's no way to, if we receive it, if you cast the ballot, it's counted. The one thing that we do is an audit process where we do a lot of very intricate auditing for each. Right now it's by precinct, it'll change obviously, but those audits will still take place to ensure that the number of people who showed up, that's the number of ballots we received, and that's the number of ballots that went through our devices. The one thing I like to mention is if you are interested in things like post-election audits, it's completely observable to the public. The election that we had today is our last sort of big election before the change. If you are interested in seeing how we process and audit the election, I welcome everyone to come down to our office. The team that I oversee also does the tours. We call them observer tours, and you can see how we check the signatures on vote by mail, how we do what we call a 1% manual tally, which would relate to checking that everything got counted properly. There's a lot of other processes. So it is a transparent process, and you're welcome to watch that.
Thank you.
I know we've touched on staffing. but I just want to ask a couple of questions about staffing. The individuals that are going to be working at the poll, will they be educated on IT matters, that if a person is having a problem or the machine, computer is down, is
Yes.
that person going to be?
So there's going to be a lead at each vote center, and they'll be the most knowledgeable individual.
Yes.
It's very similar to an inspector, but they'll have a little bit higher level of knowledge.
Yes.
Each will have registrar staff will also be at locations. We're going to have people who just do the check-in. There'll be people who are line monitors and greeters. So depending on your skill level and your skill set, you probably would be assigned to different roles and responsibilities. So, but there is going to be a significant amount of training and education.
And there'll
as
be
well.
an area supervisor that would go to each site to make sure. And then I just want to ask this question.
Sure.
A lot of work and expertise has gone into this process, and I think overall we'll be pleased with it. But is Sacramento, our elected officials, aware of what's happening in California?
Everyone's aware. In fact, the entire country is aware. We're getting a lot of attention from other states. The one thing we're really proud of is that this voting system, it's the first ever publicly owned voting system. So LA County, normally when voting jurisdictions need a new voting system, they find a vendor and then they purchase existing equipment. Well, we decided there was no voting system that suit our needs because of our unique challenges. So we partnered with a design firm called IDEO, and I think it was mentioned in the presentation, and they helped us design something, a human-centric design, which was mentioned at the beginning, and it's 100% owned by LA County. The advantages of a publicly owned system are we can make changes to it as needed. We can, as they mentioned in the video, it's modular so things can be swapped out. With a private owned system that a vendor supplies, let's say it needs a security patch. They're not under any obligation to implement a security patch because that would require recertification and they may not want to spend that money. With LA County, we have full control over it. We can update the security, make it a more secure system, and make it, safeguard it, and it's, fully owned by the public, and so we're pretty excited about that, and we have a lot of jurisdictions around the country watching this rollout. We got a really nice compliment actually from Microsoft. You guys have heard of Microsoft, right? So they're actually been involved in the project kind of peripherally from the beginning, and they are actually working on open source election software that other jurisdictions can use in different counties. They basically said we're doing exactly what they want to do, but we're actually several years ahead of them, and they've been extremely impressed with how this project has been rolling out. So to get that kind of compliment from Microsoft for LA County, I think is really huge. So, we're trailblazers here. So, okay.
Hi. Oh, thank you.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So you said earlier that the data is just stored for the voting tallies. There's no there's no voter learning going on, the OAI with the.
Sorry, are you talking about the device, the voting device?
Yes.
So yeah, it doesn't store any information. The election is tallied off the paper.
Okay. So could you then? I know you said before you're not an IT person. Is there someone on city council that you could refer me to that would know more about working with the people that are doing it? Is there a way?
Sure. I'll give you my card and let's talk offline.
Okay. And then the same thing. I was going to ask with the AI, the machines, had they have capabilities to then have the implementation done to them, or would they need completely new machines?
The machines, I guess maybe I'm not understanding the question, but the machine is pretty standalone, and the only thing, the information on the machine is all the ballot groups. So when you put in your ballot, it knows when you put in your blank ballot with the code that lets the machine know which is your home precinct, it brings that ballot up. That's the only thing that's on the machine. That's the only thing that gets stored on the machine. And so maybe I'm not understanding the question.
Because there's all these different options to use the machines to make it easier for everybody. So it would be easier if the machines knew what the person wanted to do prior to coming up based on what they'd done before.
Oh, I see.
Elections.
No, they don't. They don't have that. They don't have that kind of memory or anything like that.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
You indicated that the tally of each of the voting centers would be daily, and then after 8 o'clock on election night, you would feed them into the tally machine? Please elucidate, how did that work?
Okay, so yeah, just some clarification. They'll be prepping done daily, but not tallying. So they'll prep it, they'll send it through the machine, but it doesn't yet tally anything. It just gets ready for tally. And then at 8 o'clock on election night is when they will do the tally. But there's prep work that has to go into getting the ballots ready ahead of time.
Is that feeding into the tally machine manually done, or is that going to be done by computer, or what?
There's a manual process. Someone works with the machine. We have a whole team of people who stand there and they work with feeding the, yeah. So they feed like large stacks through.
Will that be an observable?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. So I have one question back here, and then one question here, and then I think we'll cut it off. But I'll hang out afterwards if anyone wants to come out and ask any more questions.
Is the system you've developed, is that compatible with ranked choice voting?
Great question. So because it is county owned and we developed the software and everything, if the state suddenly moved to ranked choice voting, we would have the ability to make that change. Okay. All right. Okay, and so the last question right up here. I think there's, okay, Laura's going to come up after me, but I can answer your question afterwards, so don't worry.
Yes, I wanted to know who made the decision about same-day registration and voting at all booths, and who we would address that question to, because...
That would be a state law? Yes, so you'd want to talk to your state legislator. Okay, so the Q&A portion's over. I think there's just some stuff they have to wrap up with, but I'll hang out in the foyer if anyone wants to ask any questions, either after the event or right now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So my name is Laura Herrera, and I also work for the LA County Register Recorder, County Clerk's Office. And I do want to thank you all for coming. I just didn't want to lose sight with one of the things that we want to capture from this meeting is really the suggestions and comments about the vote center locations that we have done extensive research and data analysis and info gathering from the community. And we wanted to bring that once again to you today. So you'll see in the back, there is a station. If you wave, Shane, that'd be great, over there on that side. That's where you'll be able to give your suggestions and your comments on the suggested vote center locations and leave comments on those potential sites. And so we did want to provide a full list of the 57 potential vote center locations that are for this specific focus area. But as you know now, you can vote anywhere in LA County, not just at your specific polling place. So we wanted to give a county-wide view as well. So there's a map in the back, but there's also 2 binders that show all 2,000 potential vote center locations that you can also look through and comment on. And then you, like, if you didn't want to do that tonight, you can also look on that VCPP portal online, and which you can access on the VSAP website, which is vsap.lavote.net. So I did want to allow for time for people to be able to do that, which you can do so before you leave here today. And if you still had any questions, I am available. Of course, Jeff is available. And we have county staff and staff from the City Clerk of Pasadena's office to answer your questions, because we really want to make sure that those are answered. But before you all leave, I do want to once again thank the Armenian National Committee of America, Pasadena chapter, for hosting this meeting, and as well as the City Clerk, Danny, and his board members. Really excellent presentation. But also really truly thank the City Clerk's Office of Pasadena, Mark Chomsky and his amazing staff for allowing this partnership for us to have our meeting here at the Pasadena Convention Center and invite you all. It's really about building those connections to be able to create a voting experience which really works for LA County voters. So thank you so much for coming today, and please feel free to offer your suggestions and ask any questions of us. Thank you so much.